Hello guys, welcome to the 7th part of my tutorial on how to create an inventory system for Blender game engine. Uh, Last part we had written a couple of scripts, and the outcome was that we're able to click on the items that are scattered on the ground and pick them up. Furthermore, by pressing I, we can visualize our inventory and see that the items that we have picked from the ground are now stored in various inventory slots, and that there are inventory slots that can hold multiple items, multiple units of an item, such as this one here. And what we're going to do today is we're going to make use of our inventory. We're going to create a simple character, and we're going to equip him with the items we have collected from the ground, and we have stored in our inventory. And before we start, we have to create this simple character I'm talking about. So I'm going to create a very simple 3D mesh. The purpose of this tutorial is not to teach you how to create a 3D character. So I'm going to create a very basic mesh. Extrude Y, Alt S and Y. These are the arms, and then we are going to create something like legs. Okay, I'm not giving you the short keys of what I'm doing, because this is a rather simple model and it has nothing to do with the outcome of this tutorial. Okay, and I'm going to remove doubles. Okay, I'm going to give it a basic animation. Specifically, I'm going to make it to create a okay. Yes, I was sure that something is wrong here, so I'm deleting these faces and these faces. Fill this one and fill this one, and again extrude S along the y-axis. Okay, now it's better. I'm going to give it a basic hit animation, and for this reason I'm going to add an armature. Okay, and I'm going to enable the X-ray option, go to edit mode, and create his arm, which will consist of let's say 2 bones. Okay, now we have the bone, and I'm going to parent. I'm not giving you the shortcuts. I hope you know how to create armatures, or for that case let me enable the screencast keys. Okay, right click to select your 3D model, and then shift and right click and to display to select the armature, and press Ctrl P and select with automatic weights, then select the bone and press Ctrl and Tab and select this bone, and okay, if you move it, you see that I have to make some modifications, because it is moving very awkwardly. So I'm going to weight paint mode and see that this bone affects all this area, and I want I want this bone not to affect the area of the body, just the tip of the arm. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit mode, and here we have the vertex groups that are controlled by these bones. Okay, for this bone 001, if I press select, you can see that all vertices are selected by this bone. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the vertices I wanted to control. Press Ctrl I, and I'm going to remove the vertices that I don't want it to control. So if I press tab, okay, you see now that only these vertices, only this area will be affected, and this one won't be affected. And by pressing R, okay, I'm validating that it works as expected. Okay, I don't want good animation. It will be only to show you how to show you that the equipped weapon will be equipped, and it will be carried by the character, and furthermore the character will be able to use it in an animation. So I have created my character, and I have given him a basic animation. Next step would be to create an empty here, not in pose, in object mode. Create an empty that will be the place where my weapons will be spawned. So I'm going to name this weapon spawn, and I'm going to parent it to a bone. And which bone? Press Ctrl Tab, select the empty, and then this bone, the outer bone, and press Ctrl P and bone. I don't want the bone to deform the empty. It wouldn't have any meaning. But I want it to follow its rotation and location. So now you see that when I move this bone, it also affects the position and the location of the empty. And one more thing is that, let me select the weight paint. Okay, you see that this bone affects this area too, and I don't want it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to edit mode, select the bone, select these bones, and select bone and remove. Okay, you see now that this bone selects the arm, and the other bone the rest of the 3D mesh. Okay, now movement looks more normal. It's not, I know, but we don't want it to have a realistic movement. So back where we were. Okay, so here is the place where our character will hold the weapon. But what happens in the case where the character doesn't hold a weapon? In this case, I will let's assume that the character will use his fists in order to inflict damage to the enemies. So I'm going to create another weapon, an imaginary weapon, which will be called fist. So I will open my database, my weapons database, and I have already created here, but let's delete the line, and I'm going to create it again. Fist, damage 1, no value, 100 type, no quantity, and no max quantity. Okay, this is an imaginary weapon. It won't be visualized, or it won't occupy a slot in our inventory, but we need it for the cases the case where our character won't wield a weapon. So let's save again as a CSV file. Okay, yes. And furthermore, remember that our weapons are here in this weapons blend file. I have stored them in a separate file, and the same what we have done for the rest of weapons, I have to make to create another weapon that will represent the fist of the hero, and imagine this not as a 3D mesh but as a collisions box, okay, that will represent the fist of the hero. And that's because whenever the character hits, you want to detect the collision of his fist with the enemy, so you need a 3D model to use as a collision box. And for this reason we are creating a 3D mesh for the fist, rename the object's name and the mesh's name to to the appropriate ID from the database. Okay, remember that in my database W305 is the fist, so name the same way, use the same name for this item. And don't forget to return to the first layer and save the weapons blend file. Okay, and now I'm going to make some more I'm going to work some more on this character. First of all, I want to make him move, and I want to create an animation for the hit animation. First of all, in order to make him move, I'm going to use just the logic bricks and not a Python script, because it's not the objective of this tutorial is an inventory system, so I'm not going to work too much with the movement. Okay, wrong axis, use the local axis, and no, sorry, move along the x-axis. Okay, that's too much. Dot 1. Okay, so I made him move along the x-axis. And furthermore, I'm going to create animation, so I'm going to change to animation screen and change with Control Tab to pose mode, and make sure that you are in the first frame or in the 0 frame. And I don't like 0, let's make it let it 0. So press I and select visual lock rod to create a key here, then move to the 10th keyframe and press I and first rotate, let's say here, and press I, visual lock rod again, and move to 20 and press R again, and I, visual lock rod to create another keyframe, and then go to the 13th keyframe, press Alt R to clear the rotation, and press I and again visual lock rod. Okay, so you have this animation, and select here from the action editor the name and change it to hit. Okay, now I can save my file, and I think everything is ready to start writing code. And furthermore, no, I'm not ready. I'm going to create some more bricks. This brick and controller and an actuator and action actuator. Okay, select hit as an action. Okay, notice that I'm adding all these sensors and actuators in my armature and not the 3D model. Okay, both the movement and the animation logic bricks are assigned to the armature. Okay, remember that start frame is 0 and end frame was 30. And I have selected spacebar as a key to activate the animation. So, okay, when you press space in your game, the hand moves. Okay, now I have made the preparations, and now I'm going to write some code to equip the weapons. First of all, I'm going to create here, starting from my init script, and remember that this script was assigned to the camera. It is a main script, and this script is launched once in the beginning of the game, and I have clicked here this button here, which means that this script will be executed before any other script. And what I'm going to do in this initial script, and first of all I'm going to create a function that will be called initiate. Okay, now we don't need the screencast keys. Initiate vars, and it's going to create some variables, some global variables that will be used throughout my game. Def initiate vars. Okay, and what I'm going to initiate, I'm going to create a key in my global dictionary which will be called active weapon, active web, to save some characters. And what's I'm going to assign as an initial value is I'm going to create another function, and I'm going to name it set active weapon. And what this function is going to do, set active weapon, is going to search whether there is a weapon active, a weapon that is already equipped, and it's going to equip it in the beginning of the game. If it is not, it's going to equip the character. It's going to set as an active weapon the fist. And in order to remind you, okay, here is my inventory CSV file, and notice that I have this column here which specifies whether a weapon that is held on the corresponding slot is equipped or not. Okay, so here in the beginning of the game all slots are false. The equipped state of all slots is false, but if you create a save routine, probably one of this value probably will be true. So in the beginning of the game you want to check whether there is a true value and set the corresponding weapon as an active weapon. If all values here are false, then we are going to set the fist as the active weapon, and as it is reasonable, fist does not occupy an inventory slot, and that would be irrational to spend an inventory slot to hold the fist. So having this in mind, let's write the code. So I'm creating a variable called named result, and it will be 0005, and that's the variable my function will return. But okay, so the initial value is weapon 5, which is for the fist, and the script will return W305 if nothing else happens during the execution of the function. But what we're going to add more is we have to, for I in gd inv dot values, we have to check whether our inventory contains an already equipped item. So we're going to check whether it has an equipped item. If I equipped equals to true, then result is equal to id iid obj. Okay, and remember that here is the slot name, but the ID of the weapon that is stored in the slot, it's stored here in this column, and it has ID obj as a header. Okay, now, okay, in the event that there is a true value here, then the weapon will change to the active weapon will change to the ID obj object weapon. Okay, so we have created our global variable for the active weapon, and having this in mind, we are going to write some code. First, let me save the file and select your empty, and we are going to write some code that will control the behavior of this empty. So I'm creating a new text, and I'm going to name it weapon spawn. Alright, and now let's enable the script. It will be launched continuously during the execution of the game, and I will probably need an edit object, an add object actuator. Let's rename it to spawn, and we don't have to specify object because the object will always change depending on the weapon we will click on in the inventory. Okay, here is our weapon spawn script. It's empty, and to save time, I'm going to copy a part of the code from the main script that I'm going to use here too in the weapon spawn script. Okay, I think I'm going to need most of this code. Okay, if you had copied okay, one pause here, if you had copied the code from previous part of this tutorial, you may have noticed that here, instead of get current scene, I had written by mistake get current controller. So here in your I'm sorry, in your main script, if here you have get current controller, please correct it and write get current scene. I had made a mistake here, but it did not affect the outcome because I hadn't used the scene variable here in this script, but for programming reasons, change this to get current scene, and of course in the weapon spawn, get current scene here if you have get current controller instead. And of course we don't need this line, but we need to create a new variable that will hold the actuator this actuator here. Okay, and I'm keeping the function that gives me that returns a scene, the scene. So let's write some code. And what we're going to do, first of all, I want to check whether the spawn, the weapon spawn object has a child, and that's because all weapons that will be created will be created as children to this weapon spawn object. So first of all, I'm going to check if length of own children, okay, children is a list, okay, because there can be more than one children to an object. So I'm checking whether this list has a length or not. So if the list's name is equal to 0, then we have to create a weapon that will be either the fist or a weapon, and this will be defined by this GD, where is it, GD active weapon variable we have already assigned in the beginning of the game. So back to the weapon spawn, we are going to set the object here, spawn.object equal to GD active weapon, and we are going to create the active weapon spawn object, no sorry, instant add object, and we are going to create spawn object last created set parent. We are going to set this object, the weapon spawn object, as a parent of the weapon that will be created. Okay, so we set the parent of the last created object from this command to own, and we're fine. Let's run the game, and of course I'm not expecting it to run correctly, and it does not. Let's check our console. No. Let's check if it runs this part of code. Press P and escape. Okay, it does, but I can't see active weapon here, instant object. It should work. The problem may be that, okay, it creates the item, you can see it here, so it's created in a wrong position, and I'm going to reopen the weapons file, press going to 2, and of course the problem is that you see that where the center of the object is, so I'm going to go to the default and change the origin to center of the mass. Go to first layer and save, and now whenever I press P, okay, you notice that there is a rectangle here, a cube here, and this cube is the collision box of the fist. And if I visualize the physics, Blender game and window game, so physics visualization, okay, this little cube here is the collision box of the fist. So whenever you hit an enemy, then what's going to happen is that you are going to detect this collision and write some code to inflict damage and lower the enemy's health. So we have our initial weapon, but what happens in the case that there already is, or press Elif, in the case where there already is a weapon equipped. In this case we want to check whether the weapon, the object that is parented to the empty, whether it's the same with the active weapon. And in the case that it's not, this means that we have selected a different weapon. So else if own dot children 0, and I'm writing 0 because my list, the children of the empty, will always be 1, the weapon that the character is holding. So I know that this list will contain only one element, so that's why I'm writing 0 here. This is the first element, the first and only element of the list. And whether this, and I'm going to convert it to a string to avoid an error, whether this is it is not equal to the active weapon, then change the active weapon as we did here. But the difference is that we are going to own children 0 dot end object. We are going to delete the already equipped model, and we are going to add the new selected weapon. But in order to do this, we are going to write a script in our inventory. And furthermore, don't forget to update your inventory with a new weapon, but we are going to do this from the inventory script. And here is our inventory script. Remember that the inventory script is connected with the camera here, the camera in the inventory scene. And I have created an initial inventory script, but I'm going to need another script that it's going to launch in its game cycle. So I'm going to create another script named inv, and I want this script to be executed in every game cycle. So be sure to press this button here for the true level triggering, and select the inv. And again, I'm going to pick this part of code from the main script and copy it here. Alright, and what I want to do here, first of all, I want to detect whether whether a slot was clicked, and I need an identifier for the slots. And this identifier will be a game property. I'm going to add the same game property to all the slots, and this game property will be named slot. Okay, we don't care about the value or the type. We just need the slot value to exist. So create a slot value for all the slots. Okay. Alternatively, you could use the name. All the slots begin with slot and a number from 1 to 8. So we could use the first four letter of the object name, but I think that having a game property is more correct because you may have another item named, let's say, slot parent or slot picture or something like that, and that would confuse you because it would detect it also. But having a special property here for each slot, the, a special and the same property, of course, for each slot would help you more to detect the would help you to detect more easily the slots. And furthermore, I'm going to create let me see, where is the mouse, a mouse over any sensor, because I'm going to detect whether my mouse cursor is over a slot, and I have created a code that I can use again here in the inventory script. Okay, so I'm telling it here. Remember, this is the code for the left click click button, for the left button. So I'm saying whether if left click button was pressed, left button was pressed, and there was an object under my cursor, then first of all check if it has the property slot. Okay, if it has the slot property, then what we are going to do is we are going to assign the mesh of that is held in this in the each slot to the active weapon. So we are going to write a move hit object, and we can create, and let's see. Okay, let's create a variable slot which will hold the hit object, and we can detect, we can take the mesh. I don't know if it has a name here, or alternatively you can use the string to convert it to string is equal to active weapon. Okay, but what happens in the case that our slot is empty? We have to check this for this too. So I'm checking if string of the slot dot meshes 0 is not empty, then change to active change the active weapon to the hit object. And furthermore, we are going to have to update our databases. And first of all, inside the inventory, we are going to say that this object will we are going to change the slot to active, this here, the equipped state to true. So slot equipped equals to true. But before this, we need to clear all the true values before assigning a new true value, because we had already equipped a weapon, it would have the true value, but now that we have equipped a new weapon, we will have two objects with a true value. So before doing this, we are going to create a function here, def unequip all, and what it's going to do, it's going to, for I in inv dot values, it's going to set the I equipped to false. Okay, let's save. And furthermore, there is another case where we are going to click the already equipped weapon, and this will be assigned to the function of unequipping the weapon. So if the string of slot dot mesh is 0 is equal to the active weapon, and this is not correct here. Active web gd act web. Okay, in this case what we need to do is we want to unequip the weapon, and in order to do this, first of all, I'm sorry, I forgot to run the unequip all function. Unequip all. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to change the slot mesh to empty, and we are going to unequip all we are going to unequip all, and I think I have made a mistake here. Yes, I don't want to change the mesh. The opposite, I want to assign this value, the mesh value, to the active weapon. So change this gd active weapon. Okay, let's review our script. First, we check whether the left button was clicked, the left mouse button was clicked, and whether there is an object under the mouse cursor. In this case, we check whether there is a slot variable, whether the object that is beneath the mouse cursor has a slot property. In this case, okay, I'm assigning a slot variable which takes the value of the object that was under the cursor, and we check for two conditions. First of all, whether my slot is not empty. In this case, if the slot is not empty, we are going to equip the weapon, and no, I think that the best would be first to check whether first we check whether our mesh contains the already equipped, whether our slot contains the already equipped weapon. In this case, we are unequipping the weapon. Not is empty, is W005. We are unequipping the weapon, so we are setting as an active weapon the fist, and we unequip everything in our inventory database. And this means that we change the value equipped to false for all for all the weapons that are held in my inventory. So in the case that the weapon that is held, that is stored in my slot is not the active weapon, we check whether this is empty or not. And if the slot is not empty, we are going to change the active weapon with the one that is stored in the slot, and we are going to unequip all the objects and equip the object that was clicked in the slot. So let's see if it works as expected. Okay, press P. Okay, let's select this one, okay, press I and select the axe, and if you notice, let's select another view. I think I have created a very small object, and press P, select the axe, press I, and okay, it's rather small, but you can see that the axe is drawn here. Let's see it in a larger view. Press P, and I'm going to select some weapons. If I click the axe, you see here that now the axe is my new weapon. If you select the sword, it changes to sword. If you press the sword again, it will change to the fist. If you select the bow, you see that the bow is drawn here, and that the collision box is updated. And you may have noticed that you may not like the rotation of the weapon here. All you have to do is select the empty here and rotate it by 90 degrees. And if we run again, okay, now it looks more beautiful. I'm going to rotate 100 degrees from the top view, and let's see again if it works. Okay, you probably have to rotate the weapons, but you can see that the equipped weapon is updated, and I think we are ready. We have the weapon, the assigned weapon. We are able to equip with the weapon, and of course, and let me disable the physics visualization because it is more an impediment rather than a help at this moment. And press P and change the weapon. Okay, if you walk, your hero holds the weapon and he moves at the same time. You pick up another weapon, you can change, and it updates with the new weapon. And I think that will be all for equipping objects. Yes, one more thing I wanted to add here is it's an omission from the previous part. And remember that in our dropped items database we have this value here which specifies whether a dropped item will be drawn when our scene is loaded. And we want whenever we pick a dropped object, we don't want it to be spawned again whenever we reload the scene. So we have to change this value from true to false to say to the engine that we don't want the dropped item to be spawned again, because we already have it picked up. And here in my spawn dropped items, we check for this value, whether my spawn point is active. But what I haven't done is that I haven't changed the value when we pick an object from the ground. And I'm going to do it now here in our main script. Here in this line we make the dropped object disappear after we have picked it up. And before this, I'm going to change the value in the dropped item. And in order to do this, I need to have the code of the dropped item, okay? Because here in the database I have the identifiers of the weapons, but I need the identifier of the dropped item, because the dropped items identifier the state of true or false. It goes with the identifier of the dropped item and not the weapon. And you can easily understand why, because here we have 4 instances of the arrows. This is the identifier for the arrows, but we have 4 different drop points, and we will need to specify specifically for which drop point we want to disable or enable spawning. But whenever we spawn the items, we don't keep the information, the data of which drop point this dropped item is assigned to. And remember, we had assigned this here, this variable here, in order to control whether an item is pickable or not. And we had given it a value of 1, just to give it a value. We said that we detect for the existence of this variable and not for the value, but for now I'm going to change this value to something more useful, and this useful will be the drop code. And in order to do this, here I need 2 variables, keys.i. In gd dropped items, I think this is, let me check my reference file, I can't remember exactly how it is named. It is, sorry, spawn dropped items in it, items, yes. Okay, so I'm replacing it with items, and this items gives me 2 variables, both the key and the value, so is equal to key. Okay, so here in this pickable variable, I'm storing the key value, and which in our case is this identifier here. So I'm keeping this information too, and to use it whenever I pick up an object, to update my dictionary of dropped items, that I want each state to change to false. So what I'm going to write here is that mo.hit object pickable, and the string of that. So let's assign here drops gd dropped items. So let's say, so I need the dropped items, the dropped items with the key of the pickable value of the object that was hit. And remember, this pickable value now holds the drop code from the drop database, and its active state to change to false. Okay, now if I reload the scene, then the drop, the according drop, won't be created because I have set it to false status. And why? Because I have already picked up this object, and I don't need it to be recreated. So let's save and check that we don't have any errors. I think that everything works as expected. Let's check our console too. Console is clear. So that's for now. I don't know if I have to create this a little smaller. And press Control A, rotation and scale, rotation and scale, and rotation and scale. And because my weapon is too small to see, pick up, okay, now it's large enough. So press P, pick up the weapons, press I, select your weapon, and change to whichever weapon you want, or unequip. And move your character and press space to hit an opponent. So now our inventory has the ability, has the function to equip the character. And that's all for this part. Next part, we are going to write some more code, and I think it will be the last part for the inventory tutorials. And as I've said, we are going to write some code that will control, that will allow us to, that will allow us to drop the objects we have picked on the ground. Okay, so we are going to right click here, and these objects are going to fall on the ground, and the empty slots and the inventory slots will be emptied. But until then, I hope first of all that you understood what I did today. If you have any questions or proposals to make, you're always free to do so. And until the next time, what I'm advising is keep practicing and keep learning things. There are a lot of quality tutorials in the net, so even if you don't understand something, you can always ask or search. And that will be all for now. Thank you one more time for watching this tutorial, and for listening to what I had to say. And until the next time, have fun and keep practicing.